It's Tuesday, it's the 17th of June. You're watching Arirang, Korea's only global network. Live from Seoul, I'm Moon Geon-young. Now let's begin with Uzbekistan, where President Park Geun-hye is close to wrapping up her first full day of state visit there. Now, President Park Geun-hye and her Uzbek counterpart agreed to expand economic cooperation in the areas of energy, environment, and textiles. During their summit in Tashkent Tuesday, President Park and President Islam Karimov spoke about boosting the participation of Korean businesses in a $4 billion Uzbek gas field project and in the construction of a $300 million solar plant in Samarkand. Now, Seoul is also interested in helping the city of Samarkand to set up a waste management system and building a textile complex in Tashkent. The Uzbek leader also endorsed President Park's Eurasia initiative, which aims to reconnect the Far East and Europe through Central Asia by linking energy and logistics infrastructure across the continent. Now, President Park will also visit Kazakhstan and Turkmenistan during her week-long trip to Central Asia. Now, moving on to what's rattling the political scene here in Korea. Despite the firestorm surrounding President Park's pick for Prime Minister over controversial remarks he's made over the years, the presidential office plans to forge ahead with his nomination. A formal request calling for a confirmation hearing is expected to be submitted to the National Assembly later today. And as our political correspondent Kim Young reports, lawmakers are likely to make the process unpleasant for Prime Minister-designate.
Prime Minister nominee Moon Chang-geuk's apology for controversial remarks he made years back about Japan's colonization of the Korean peninsula doesn't go far enough for the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy, or NPAD.
Japan's colonization remains the biggest scar for the Korean people. We cannot nominate a prime minister who has a distorted view of history. If the government proceeds with the confirmation hearings, it will be criticized for lacking common sense.
Should the presidential office push ahead with Moon's nomination, some NPAD lawmakers say they would consider boycotting the confirmation hearing in protest. And the negative views of the Prime Minister nominee aren't reserved for the opposition party. 6 first-time lawmakers of the ruling Saenuri Party have issued statements calling for Moon to withdraw his nomination, while a number of more experienced lawmakers have openly criticized him. But the ruling party's full leader, Lee Won-gu, plans to go ahead with the confirmation process.
There seem to be suspicions and doubts about the Prime Minister nominee, but the National Assembly has a duty to proceed with the confirmation hearing and evaluate whether the candidate is suitable.
Once the National Assembly receives a request calling for a confirmation hearing, which is likely to come Tuesday, they're required to hold one within 15 days. Kim Young-geon, Arirang News.
Well, 15 crew members of the sunken Sewol ferry were back in court earlier this Tuesday to answer the charges against them. The captain of the vessel, Lee Jun-suk, bowed as he entered the courtroom, drawing anger from victims' families in attendance. Now, he, along with the 3 of his senior crew, faced charges of homicide through willful negligence. The prosecution says it'll submit over 2,000 pieces of evidence to show that the crew was derelict in its duty to save the more than 300 people that died in the disaster. And the defense plans to make its case by saying that all those that perished could not have been saved anyways. Tuesday's session is the second since the trial opened last week. Now, moving over, in a sign of the quickly deteriorating situation in Iraq, the U.S. government is reportedly considering working, in some extent anyways, with its traditional enemy, Iran. While keeping all options on the table, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry says anything constructive to providing Iraq with stability will be considered, and that includes airstrikes. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
The United States could cooperate with its traditional foe, Iran, to stop Sunni militants, known as the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, from continuing their rampage through Iraq. In an interview with Yahoo News on Monday, Secretary of State John Kerry said that while Washington is not in active discussions with Tehran, it will not rule out anything constructive in providing stability to the region. Another U.S. official said the two sides could discuss the situation in Iraq on the sidelines of nuclear talks scheduled for Wednesday in Vienna. If it were to happen, cooperation between Washington and Tehran to contain the Iraqi crisis will mark the first time in more than a decade for the two countries to jointly undertake a common security purpose. Iran is a strong backer of the Shia government in Iraq and has signaled a readiness to cooperate with the U.S. to contain the crisis. Pentagon, however, made it clear that it will not engage with Iran on military activities in Iraq. As the situation spirals out of control, Kerry added that airstrikes are an option available to Washington, but no detailed plans on how to coordinate them have been drawn up yet. Meanwhile, President Obama on Monday has notified Congress that 275 U.S. troops will be deployed to Iraq to provide support and security for U.S. personnel and the American embassy in Baghdad. The troops are combat ready and will remain in Iraq until the security situation is brought under control. About 160 troops are already in the country, including 50 Marines and more than 100 Army soldiers. Radical militants from the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant have seized large parts of northern Iraq over the last several days, threatening to dismember Iraq and unleash all-out sectarian warfare. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are enjoying the World Cup Brazil 2014. Now, starting off with the latest game that ended on this Tuesday morning. The U.S. team scored easily the fastest goal so far at this year's World Cup in what turned out to be a thrilling and explosive match. It took Captain Clint Dempsey just 30 seconds to put the ball in the back of Ghana's net. Ghana leveled it up in the second half, but John Brooks headed up the winner in the 86th minute. But it was a completely different story in the match between Iran and Nigeria in Curitiba. They became the first team to draw in this year's World Cup, playing out a rather dull 0-0. Now moving on to another record, the first hat trick in Brazil. The honor goes to Germany's Thomas Müller. Müller was also cutting up controversy after he got headbutted by Pepe. The Portuguese player, thinking Müller was play acting, reacted angrily when the referee sent him packing with a red card. A man short before halftime and injuries on the Portuguese side, their star man Ronaldo couldn't work his usual magic on the pitch. But it sure was a thrilling night for the German fans, and whether you flew all the way to Brazil, watched from the comfort of your living room, or sat in a bar with a nice cold beer, the cheering goes on regardless. Our Connie Lee brings us some seriously happy German fans who got together to support their national team right here in Seoul.
Cheers and applause burst out from soccer fans who aren't shy about showing their passion.
I painted my nails in German colors and kind of dressed red, black and white.
Show your earrings.
Oh yeah, and here.
A World Cup winning team is Brazil.
The 2014 World Cup is in full swing, and here in Korea, you not only see Team Korea fans making a statement, you see fans from all over the world packing the pubs and restaurants to watch the games.
Even though most of the World Cup matches are in the wee hours here in Korea, it's the love of the game that is bringing together the different people who are all rooting for their home country.
The atmosphere is here, good atmosphere, and the people who really enjoy the soccer and usually enjoy the hangout gather here, so it's fun.
A handful of venues are open into the early morning hours in downtown Seoul to accommodate those who want to watch the matches live and on the big screen.
Korea, the times aren't great for the World Cup games, but we had a lot of interest in the World Cup. A lot of people were emailing us and sending us messages on the Facebook page.
And it seems like if you're a true fan of soccer, it doesn't matter where you are or what time the games are on, you watch and support, even if that means going into work the next day a little tired.
Yes, it's a bad time for going to work tomorrow, but if you really want to support your team, your national team, then it doesn't matter how late it is, you just need to support them.
Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Well, I guess Group G may stand for Germany after that. Now let's turn our attention to Group H now, Korea's group. The first matches in Group H kick off this Tuesday for early Wednesday morning, Korea time. The lineup against Russia will pretty much be the same as the previous international friendly matches, headed by forward Park Geun-hye. Now the Korean squad is busy training for what will hopefully be a victory against the Russians. Let's now hear from the players themselves.
We focused on our game strategies and fine-tuning set pieces. The training was smooth in our base camp as well as here in Koyeba.
We've thoroughly monitored our opponent on video, so we are aware of their strengths and weaknesses. We are 100% ready for this match.
Now, once again, Korea's first group match against Russia is at 6 p.m. in Koyeba local time. That's at 7 a.m. on a Wednesday morning here in Korea. Before that, Belgium and Algeria will have already finished their match, so we'll have a better idea about what Korea needs to do to put themselves in the driving seat to advance the next round. Now, those of you planning to join the Red Devils cheer on the Korean squad, here are the go-to places, the spots you should head to watch the game with thousands of others in front of huge screens. The cheers will be rather subdued this year following the ferry disaster in April. A rather reserved mass cheer will be held at Gwanghwamun Square instead of the City Hall, and another spot is prepared at Yeongdong-dae Boulevard, that's in front of the business district of Samsung Station. Now, Korea's superstar Psy is set to perform his latest hit, Hangover, and his other songs for the fans right there. We will bring you the live scenes of the cheering fans, and it's some sight to see, so stay tuned to Arirang for all the excitement throughout the day.
The value of Korea's stock market has fallen a notch compared to last year, settling as the world's 12th largest market. Why? Well, it's being partly attributed to the rise of the Indian market that is riding on the wave of the so-called Modinomics. Our Na Hyung-kyung tells us more.
The combined market capitalization of Korea's publicly listed companies crossed $1.2 trillion as of the end of last week. Citing Bloomberg data, Yonhap News reports that Korea took one step back from last year when its market was the 11th biggest in the world. Analysts say capital is flowing to other emerging economies in Asia, especially to India, where new Prime Minister Narendra Modi is pledging sweeping economic reforms. Thanks to his so-called Modinomics, India's benchmark Sensex has jumped 19% so far this year, with the total market value surging nearly 30%. Korea's main index, the Kospi, edged down 1% this year, and although total market capitalization went up by 4%, the actual increase will be lower because of the strengthening won. The Korean market currently makes up 1.9% of the global market. That's down 0.1 percentage points from last month and down 0.4 percentage points from August 2011, when it was at its highest. Experts say foreign buyers are moving their money away from Korea because they feel that Samsung Electronics, the major player on the Kospi, is not pushing for growth as strongly as they could. Another reason is said to be the weaker than expected performances by Korea's usual strongholds, the shipbuilding and petrochemical industries, which rely heavily on exports to China. Na Hyun-kyung, Arirang News.
The International Monetary Fund has cut its growth forecast for the U.S., citing a harsh winter that led to a weak first quarter. Now, in its annual review of the U.S. economy, the IMF said that it expects 2% growth this year, down from its 2.8% forecast back in April. However, it did say that it expects 3% growth next year, and the IMF added that the U.S. should cut spending and raise revenue in the long term, and also suggesting that the country raise its minimum wage to reduce the poverty rate, currently at 15%. Well, some welcome news for Korea. Korea's top 2 electronics brands are getting high marks for their home appliances in the United States. LG and Samsung products were rated among the best on the market by Consumer Reports magazine in a survey released today. Well, two of LG's top-loading washers got the highest scores for their turbo wash and steam technology. Now, Samsung Electric Front Low Dryer was chosen as the best dryer brand for its energy efficiency, as it reduces drying time by a third and saves energy consumption by 0.25%.
When the latest news meets the latest business stories, we give you a bigger and better picture of the world. Business Today with Moon Geun-hye, every weekday, only on Arirang.
You know, most of us are not aware of this, but driving around with worn-out tires can pose a serious risk to your health. And not only because of the obvious safety aspect. Latest research by Korea's Ministry of Environment has shown that the amount of fine and ultrafine dust particles emitted from old tires in the Seoul metropolitan area alone is expected to reach between 1,000 to 2,000 tons a year by 2024. Well, to give you an idea of how much this is, it's roughly half the amount emitted by construction work in 2007. Now, the ministry says a diesel car puts out 5 milligrams of fine dust per kilometer, but driving with worn-out tires over that same distance results in 20 times as much dust drifting into the atmosphere. So, in order to reduce the pollution factor, the ministry is planning to equip vehicles that drive long distances like buses, taxis, and trucks with special kinds of tires. Now, smartphone watchers, beware. Your text messages, call history, and really pretty much anything else you're doing with your phones could be under surveillance without you even knowing it. Our Kim Min-ji explains.
This smartphone has an application called M-Spy installed on it. When the application is run, the messages and call history from the phone appear on the administrator's homepage. It reveals the current location of the smartphone, the phone's serial number, and mobile carrier. Phone conversations are even recorded.
그 위치가 어떻게 되죠?
네, 여기 종로구입니다. 그 위치가 어떻게 되죠? 네, 여기 종로구입니다.
These so-called spy applications have emerged as one of the newest problems for smartphone users, already wary of their privacy being invaded. Installing the application isn't that difficult either. After purchasing the application, you can install it secretly on a person's smartphone or send a smishing message that will install the application automatically. This will then keep track of the location of the smartphone, phone conversations, and even the user's activities on social networking services. The makers of such applications say they were developed to keep an eye on adolescent delinquents and to prevent the leaking of technologies. However, the applications are in fact being used to spy on employees or as a means to find out if the user is having an affair.
The hacker has full authority over a smartphone installed with the spy application. It can even lead to financial losses, as verification codes are sent to the phone when users make micropayments.
The application does not appear on the screen of your smartphone if installed secretly.
Users should not click on links of suspicious text messages. They should update the vaccines on their smartphones and check if their phones have been affected by malicious codes regularly.
With some 40 million smartphone users in Korea, there is a newfound sense of urgency to come up with technology that can counter such violations of privacy. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, the house of cards is starting to fold as Sunni extremists move south through the country of Iraq, threatening to move on Baghdad and disrupt global oil prices in the process. Now, to give you some perspective, Iraq produces around 3.3 million barrels of oil per day, making it the second largest producer of the OPEC countries. And the fear for investors is that turmoil in Iraq could spill over into supply, which would raise prices worldwide and severely dampen Iraq's potential output. Let's take a closer look. Dr. Kim Byung-ju joins me live in the studio. So, Dr. Kim, this week began with growing worldwide concerns over oil price, of course, triggered by the situation in Iraq. But yesterday we saw the upward trend slow down a bit. And with the severity of the crisis in Iraq, you may ask why prices have not gone up even higher. In fact, we're just getting numbers that Brent crude closed down 0.1%, so nearly flat. And WTI also closed down about 0.3%. So what is going on?
Well, basically the price itself prices themselves have gone up quite significantly so far. And so, for example, yesterday in New York, the Mercantile Exchange right there, like a 1 cent drop right there was just like kind of like a catching breath in a way after a long ride upwards for this oil price as a whole. What has happened was this 1 cent drop was the first such kind of moderating or moderating movement, I should call it. First time that's happening in 4 trading days, and Western Texas Intermediate themselves. What happened was last Friday they reached a recent peak, which was $107 per barrel, and what's happening is about 4% rise during the past week itself. So this is quite a considerable rise, and perhaps the level that we saw last time back in December. And some people are saying actually what we are seeing, the overall oil price level that we are seeing is about as similar to what we saw back in year 2011 during the peak of Arab Spring. So while we were not paying much attention, the oil price has come up, and this has a lot to do with the overall Iraq situation in Iraq. They are saying on the other side of this commodity market, gold price has come up as well, indicating the overall financial journey in the financial market altogether. And we know this, as you mentioned, this is because of the confrontation between the Shia-based government in Iraq confronting the Sunni, militants right there. And the United States cannot seem to make up its mind in terms of what it wants to do and what it will do. And in the meantime, the overall market seems to be kind of like losing their confidence. So it looks like even though the prices seem to be kind of slowing down a little bit, they're saying this is just somewhere in the middle in terms of our way to go in terms of oil price moving upwards.
Well, just to give you an update, as I said earlier, the Western Texas Intermediate, it closed just about 44 cents shy of that $107 peak yesterday. So that's something that we should be on the lookout for.
For sure.
Now, on top of the Iraqi concerns, the Russia-Ukraine situation is adding on to the worries.
Absolutely. This is actually adding, further push upwards in terms of the oil market here. Russia actually announced, last Sunday, saying they're going to cut off the gas supply to Ukraine because Ukraine has been, late, has been slow in meeting their payment obligations. Russia said they will continue to supply the gas that should go into Europe, but then again, how can you tell the difference? Gas to Europe, gas to Ukraine, they all go through Ukraine. And actually, Europe is, dependent upon Russia about 1/3 of their gas that they use there, and half of that gas that's coming from Russia to Europe go through Ukraine. So overall, they're saying, once again, the 2006, 2009, all over again, deja vu here, because that's the time we saw exactly same kind of situation where the gas supply to Ukraine was being cut off and then oil price overall rising up.
Right. So we have pessimists and optimists giving different forecasts on the situation. What's the worst case scenario for global oil prices? The
situation in Iraq is not good at all here, because this is a civil war that seems to be kind of starting, and we have a long way to go. We have Shia group supported by the Iraq, Shia group, altogether that's being represented by the government of Iraq, their militia, as well as Syrian government. also Lebanon's Hezbollah, and also Iran, like half of the Muslim world, and the other half of the Muslim world, the rebels in Iraq, as well as Syria rebels in Syria, as well as Saudi Arabia. So like whole Muslim world being divided by half,
right,
all getting into fight here. So nobody seems to be saying this fight is going to face any closure time anytime soon. So pessimists are right there saying the situation is not good at all. And the optimists, however, on the other hand, they're saying, well, the United States is there. They're actually increasing their oil price, the highest level in first time in 44 years. And the United States is a significant supplier of oil as well here.
Right.
And Saudi Arabia also is in the equation here. They could actually increase their oil production to make up for Iraq's daily production there. So optimists on one hand, pessimists on the other. We still have to wait and see. But looks like the way I see it, the oil price seems to be on its way up.
Well, fate of that nation, but as well as the fate of the oil prices, definitely something that we're all very concerned about.
Absolutely.
All right, Dr. Kim Byung-ju, thank you so much for today.
Thank you.
Now, that is your business today on this Tuesday. Thank you for watching, and do join us again at 6 p.m. Korea time on Early Edition at 6.